I was sitting in my favorite armchair when the words cut through the silence of my living room like a knife. "Mom, we need to talk." My son Michael's voice was tight, controlled in that way that told me he was uncomfortable. I set down my book, removing my reading glasses to look at him properly. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" I tried to keep my tone light, even as I noticed how he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." Michael shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his tall frame suddenly seeming boyish again, reminding me of when he was a teenager about to confess to something. But he was 34 now, married to Vanessa for 5 years, with twin 4-year-old girls who were the light of my life. "It's about Vanessa," he finally said, and my heart sank. I'd suspected this conversation was coming. The tension between my daughter-in-law and me had been growing steadily over the past year. She feels that your involvement in our lives is becoming a problem." I nodded slowly, trying to process his words without letting my face reveal the hurt blooming in my chest. "I see. And what do you think, Michael?" He ran a hand through his hair, another gesture from his youth that appeared whenever he was stressed. I think we need some boundaries, Mom. Vanessa says it's not normal for you to be at our house 3 or 4 times a week. She says the girls are getting confused about who their mother is." The accusation stung like a physical slap. "I'm only trying to help, Michael. You both work such long hours, and the girls love spending time with their grandmother. I've never once tried to replace Vanessa." "I know, Mom, but—" "And let's be honest," I continued, unable to stop myself. "Who takes the girls to their doctor appointments when they're sick? Who stayed with them for 2 weeks straight when Vanessa decided she needed that spa retreat with her friends?" Michael's face hardened. "That's not fair. Vanessa works incredibly hard, both at her job and at home. She deserves breaks too." "Of course she does." "I've never said otherwise." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "But I don't understand how my helping has suddenly become a problem. Is this really coming from Vanessa, or is this how you feel too?" He looked at the floor, and I knew. I knew before he even spoke that my son, my only child who I'd raised alone after his father walked out when he was just 7, was about to choose his wife over me. "Mom, I love you. But Vanessa is my wife, and we need to do what's right for our family. I am your family too, Michael." My voice trembled slightly. He finally looked at me directly. "Vanessa wants us to try 6 months without the constant visits. She thinks we need space to establish ourselves as a nuclear family." 6 months? I whispered, thinking of my granddaughters' faces, how quickly children change at that age. "You want me to stay away from Lily and Emma for 6 months? You can still see them on special occasions, of course. Birthdays, holidays." He trailed off, seemingly aware of how hollow this sounded. "And if I don't agree to this, space?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Michael's shoulders slumped. "Please don't make this harder than it already is, Mom." I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 62 years. "So I'm being given an ultimatum. Stay away, or be cut off completely. That's not what—" "It is what you're saying, Michael. Let's at least be honest about that." I walked to the window, looking out at the garden I'd tended for decades. The garden where Michael had played as a child, where I'd taught the twins to identify butterflies just last summer. "Did you know," I said quietly, "that I turned down a promotion at work 15 years ago? It would have meant relocating to Boston. Better pay, better title. But you were in high school, and I didn't want to uproot you." Michael sighed. "Mom." "Let me finish," I said, turning back to face him. "I've made every decision in my life with you as my priority. When you married Vanessa, I welcomed her with open arms. When she struggled with postpartum depression, I was there every day, sometimes all night, helping with the twins so you both could sleep. I've never interfered in your marriage or criticized how either of you parent. I've only ever tried to support your family." "And we appreciate that," Michael said quickly. "We do. But things are different now. Vanessa feels—" "What exactly does Vanessa feel?" I interrupted, my patience finally wearing thin. Because from where I stand, it seems like she just doesn't want me around anymore. Michael's face flushed. She feels that you undermine her parenting decisions, that you spoil the girls and don't respect the rules we've set, that you've created an unhealthy attachment with them. Each accusation felt like another blow. I'd always been careful to defer to their parenting choices, even when I disagreed. Yes, I occasionally sneaked the girls an extra cookie or let them stay up 15 minutes past bedtime when they stayed with me. But what grandmother didn't? I see, I said, my voice now surprisingly steady. And you agree with all this? The silence that stretched between us was answer enough. Michael, I've never wanted to come between you and Vanessa. I understand that your loyalty needs to be with your wife. But I'm asking you to look at this situation objectively. Is this really about me, undermining her? Or is there something else going on? What do you mean? He asked defensively. I hesitated, then decided that if this was to be our last real conversation for who knows how long, I might as well be completely honest. I've noticed that Vanessa seems resentful of our relationship, of the bond you and I have always had. Maybe she feels threatened by it. That's ridiculous, he scoffed, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes that told me my words had hit home. Is it? Think about it, Michael. When did these concerns about my involvement start? Was it when I helped you through your work crisis last year? When you confided in me about your marriage problems before telling her? You're twisting things, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm just asking you to consider whether this is really about what's best for the girls, or if it's about Vanessa wanting to control your relationships. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Michael's expression hardened. I didn't come here to have you analyze my marriage or criticize my wife. I came hoping we could have a mature conversation about boundaries. I felt a flash of anger. And I was hoping my son wouldn't force me to choose between dignity and access to my grandchildren. We stared at each other, the distance between us suddenly feeling like a vast chasm. This man who stood before me, this stranger with my son's face, was not the boy I'd raised to be kind, to be fair, to stand up for what was right. I think I should go, he finally said, reaching for his jacket. Michael, I called as he headed for the door. He paused, but didn't turn around. If I agree to this space, what guarantee do I have that it won't become permanent? That 6 months won't turn into a year, then 2, then forever? His shoulders tensed. You'll just have to trust me. Like I'm trusting you now? The words escaped before I could stop them. He turned then, his expression a mixture of guilt and anger. This isn't just about you, Mom. It's about what's best for my family. I am your family, I repeated, louder this time. You know what I mean, he snapped. My immediate family. My wife and daughters. The distinction cut deep. I see, I said, suddenly feeling very tired. So I've been demoted. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Michael. I moved to the sofa and sat down heavily. But life rarely is. Go home to Vanessa. Tell her you delivered her ultimatum. Mom, please, just go. I couldn't bear to look at him anymore. You've made your choice clear. After he left, I sat in the growing darkness, too numb to cry, too exhausted to move. The house that had always been my sanctuary now felt like a tomb, filled with memories of a life I'd built around my son, a son who had just walked away. I don't know how long I sat there before my phone rang. It was my best friend, Karen. Hey, did Michael talk to you? She asked, concern evident in her voice. You knew about this? I asked, hurt that she hadn't warned me. He called me yesterday, asking for advice. I told him he was making a terrible mistake, but he seemed pretty determined. She paused. How are you holding up? I'm not, I admitted, finally allowing tears to fall. He's chosen her, Karen. After everything we've been through together, he's cutting me out of his life because his wife is insecure. Oh, honey, I'm coming over, she said immediately. And for what it's worth, I think this is Vanessa manipulating him. She's never liked how close you two are. An hour later, Karen was on my doorstep with a bottle of wine and a shoulder to cry on. As we sat in my kitchen, I poured out every detail of the confrontation. So what are you going to do? She asked after I'd finished. I stared into my wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid thoughtfully. What can I do? If I fight this, I risk losing them completely. If I go along with it, I'm validating her irrational behavior and missing 6 months of my granddaughters' lives. You could try talking to Vanessa directly, Karen suggested. Maybe without Michael as a buffer, you two could clear the air. I shook my head. She's been avoiding being alone with me for months. Besides, this isn't about a misunderstanding between us. This is about her wanting me out of the picture. Karen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then maybe it's time to focus on yourself for a change, Eleanor. When was the last time you did something just for you, not centered around Michael or the twins? The question caught me off guard. I couldn't remember. After raising Michael alone, then retiring early to help with the twins, my life had become entirely defined by my role as mother and grandmother. I don't even know who I am outside of those roles anymore, I admitted. Then maybe, and I know this sounds awful, maybe this forced separation is an opportunity, Karen said gently. Maybe it's time to rediscover Eleanor the woman, not just Eleanor the mother. I considered her words. There was wisdom there, even if it was painful to hear. Maybe, I conceded. But that doesn't make the rejection hurt any less. Of course not, Karen agreed. And what Michael and Vanessa are doing is cruel, make no mistake. But you have two choices here. Let this destroy you, or use it as a catalyst for change. That night, after Karen left, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Michael's words, searching for any sign that he might have been conflicted, that some part of him recognized the injustice of what he was asking. But all I could remember was the resolute set of his jaw, the way he'd parroted Vanessa's concerns as if they were absolute truths. By morning, something had shifted inside me. The paralyzing hurt remained, but alongside it burned a small flame of determination. If my son was determined to cut me out of his life at his wife's behest, then perhaps it was time I built a life that didn't revolve around him. I called my former boss at the publishing house where I'd worked for 30 years before retiring to help with the twins. "Eleanor," she exclaimed, "what a wonderful surprise!" "Hello, Margaret," I said, surprised at how good it felt to hear her voice. "I was wondering if that consulting position you mentioned when I retired is still available." "As a matter of fact, it is," she replied, sounding pleased. "We've had the devil of a time finding someone with your expertise in children's literature. Are you seriously interested?" "I am," I confirmed, feeling more certain with each word. "I find myself with unexpected free time on my hands." We arranged to meet for lunch the following day to discuss details. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list, something I'd always done when facing a difficult situation. But this wasn't a list of ways to change Michael's mind or convince Vanessa I wasn't a threat. This was a list for me, Eleanor's next chapter. First item, the consulting position. Second, look into that writing workshop Karen had been trying to get me to join for years. Third, perhaps it was finally time to take that trip to Europe I'd been postponing since Michael was in college. As the list grew, so did my resolve. If I was being forced to step back from my role as an ever-present grandmother, then I would use that time to rediscover parts of myself that had been set aside for decades. The next morning, I woke to a text from Michael. "Mom, I hope you've had time to think about what we discussed. Vanessa and I really believe this space will be beneficial for everyone. The girls are asking about you. What should I tell them?" I stared at the screen, anger and heartbreak warring within me. How dare he act as if this was a mutual decision? How dare he use the girls to manipulate me? I began typing several responses, deleting each one. Finally, I wrote, "Tell them their grandmother loves them very much, and will see them when their parents think it's appropriate. In the meantime, I'll be respecting your wishes for space." I've accepted a consulting position and will be quite busy for the foreseeable future. I wish you and Vanessa all the best." His response came quickly. "A job? What about the girls if we need childcare in an emergency?" The audacity of his question left me momentarily speechless. So I was to be kept at arm's length unless they needed free childcare? I took a deep breath before responding, "I'm sure you and Vanessa will figure it out. After all, you're establishing yourselves as a nuclear family now." I turned off my phone after that, unable to bear any more of his hypocrisy. For the first time in decades, I was putting myself first, and the sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating. The lunch with Margaret was exactly what I needed, a reminder that I had value beyond my role as Michael's mother. She was enthusiastic about my return, and the terms of the consulting position were more than fair. 20 hours a week, mostly remote work, with occasional meetings at the office. "I have to ask," Margaret said as we finished our meal. "Why now? I thought you were fully committed to grandmotherly duties." I hesitated, then decided on honesty. My son and his wife have decided they need space from me. 6 months of limited contact. Margaret's eyebrows shot up. "That seems rather extreme." "It is," I agreed, "but perhaps it's the wake-up call I needed. I've centered my entire life around Michael, and now I'm paying the price for it." "Well, their loss is our gain," she said firmly. "And Eleanor, for what it's worth, I've always thought you were too accommodating with that daughter-in-law of yours." That evening, I called my sister Julia, who lived across the country in Oregon. We weren't particularly close. She had never approved of how I'd sacrificed myself for Michael, but I felt a sudden need to reconnect. "It's about time," was her response when I told her about the situation. "I've been telling you for years that you were setting yourself up for heartbreak by making Michael your whole world." "Not helpful, Julia," I sighed. Sorry, she backpedaled. "It's just frustrating to watch from the sidelines, but listen, maybe this is the perfect time for you to finally come visit me? Oregon is beautiful in the spring, and I've got plenty of room." The offer was tempting. I hadn't taken a real vacation in years, always arranging my schedule around Michael and the girls. "I might just take you up on that," I said, surprising both of us. "Really?" Julia sounded delighted. "Well, hallelujah. Maybe something good will come out of this mess after all." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into establishing my new routine. The consulting work was challenging in the best way, forcing me to use professional skills that had lain dormant. I joined the writing workshop, where I discovered a community of vibrant, interesting people who knew nothing about me as Michael's mom or the twins' grandmother. There, I was just Eleanor, a woman with stories to tell, but the nights were still hard. I would find myself reaching for the phone to call Michael, wanting to share some small triumph or ask about the girls. Each time, I had to remind myself of the choice he had made, of the boundaries he had established at his wife's behest. Michael texted occasionally with brief updates about the twins, always careful to maintain the emotional distance Vanessa had demanded. I responded politely but briefly, refusing to beg for crumbs of information about my own grandchildren. 1 month into our separation, I received a call from an unexpected source, Vanessa's mother, Diane. We had never been close, our relationship cordial but distant at family gatherings. "Eleanor," she began awkwardly, "I hope you don't mind me calling." "Not at all," I replied, curious about her motives. "Is everything all right?" She hesitated. "I've just come from Michael and Vanessa's and, well, the girls were asking about you. Quite insistently, actually. I thought you should know." My heart clenched at the thought of Lily and Emma asking for me, not understanding why their grandmother had suddenly disappeared from their lives. "Thank you for telling me," I managed. "How are they?" "They're children. They're resilient," Diane said, in a tone that suggested she didn't entirely approve of the situation either. "But they miss you. And if I may speak frankly, I think this whole arrangement is ridiculous." I told Vanessa as much. I was surprised by her candor. "You did?" "Yes. Whatever issue she has with you, using the children as pawns is unacceptable." I raised her better than that. Diane sounded genuinely disappointed in her daughter. "Anyway, I thought you deserved to know that the girls are asking for you. What you do with that information is up to you." After we hung up, I sat in my garden, turning the conversation over in my mind. It was validating to hear that even Vanessa's mother thought the situation was wrong, but it didn't change anything. Michael had made his choice, and I had made mine, to rebuild my life on my own terms. The following weekend, I was at a local cafe after my writing workshop when I saw them, Michael, Vanessa, and the twins, entering the coffee shop. My first instinct was to hide, but before I could move, Emma spotted me. "Grandma!" she shrieked joyfully, breaking away from her parents and racing toward me with Lily close behind. I caught them both in my arms, my heart overflowing with love and relief at the feel of their small bodies against mine. "Oh, my darlings," I whispered, breathing in their familiar scent of shampoo and childhood. Looking up, I saw Michael and Vanessa approaching, their expressions a mixture of surprise and discomfort. Vanessa looked particularly unhappy, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Mom," Michael said stiffly, "we didn't expect to see you here." "Clearly," I replied, keeping my tone neutral for the girls' sake. "I come here after my writing workshop on Saturdays." "Writing workshop?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. "Yes, I've joined a local writers group, and I'm consulting for Riverside Publishing again." I smiled down at the twins, who were still clinging to me. "How are my girls doing? I've missed you so much." "We missed you too, Grandma," Lily said earnestly. "Daddy said you were very busy." I looked directly at Michael as I answered. "I have been busy, but never too busy for you. I just needed to respect Mommy and Daddy's wishes." Michael had the grace to look ashamed, but Vanessa stepped forward. "Girls, go find us a table while we talk to Grandma." "Can't Grandma sit with us?" Emma pleaded. "Not today, sweetheart," Vanessa said firmly. "Go on now." The twins reluctantly released me and walked away, looking back several times as if afraid I'd disappear again. "I'm sorry about this," Michael began once they were out of earshot. "We didn't mean for the girls to be upset." "What did you expect, Michael?" I asked quietly. "That they'd just forget about me because it was convenient for your wife?" Vanessa's face flushed. "That's not fair. We're trying to establish healthy boundaries." "Boundaries are one thing, Vanessa. Complete excision is another." I gathered my belongings, suddenly eager to leave before I said something I might regret. "The girls clearly miss me, and according to your mother, they've been asking about me." "My mother called you?" Vanessa looked shocked and betrayed. She was concerned, as any grandmother would be. I stood up. "I've respected your wishes, as unreasonable as I find them. I've stayed away, rebuilt my life, found purpose beyond being just a grandmother. But I won't pretend this isn't hurting the girls." Michael reached out, touching my arm tentatively. "Mom, please understand." "I do understand, Michael," I interrupted, pulling away from his touch. "I understand that you chose to prioritize your wife's insecurities over your children's relationship with their grandmother. I understand that you were willing to hurt me deeply rather than stand up for what's right. I understand perfectly." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "This is exactly the kind of manipulation we're trying to protect the girls from." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Manipulation? Is that what you call honesty these days?" "I've never tried to turn anyone against you, Vanessa. I've only ever tried to be a supportive mother and grandmother. But you've convinced Michael that I'm some kind of threat, and rather than seeing through your jealousy, he's chosen to hurt both me and his children." "That's enough," Michael said sharply. "You're making a scene." I looked around the cafe, where indeed a few curious glances were being cast our way. "You're right," I conceded. "This isn't the place. But know this. I won't be made the villain in this story. Not for the girls, not for anyone. I've done nothing wrong except love my family too much." With that, I walked away, pausing only to wave goodbye to the twins, who watched me leave with confusion and sadness written across their small faces. As I drove home, tears blurred my vision, but underneath the pain was a steely resolve. Seeing the twins, seeing how much they missed me, despite whatever narrative Michael and Vanessa had fed them, had strengthened my determination. I would continue building my new life, but I would also find a way back to my granddaughters, with or without their parents' blessing. The drive home from the cafe felt like the longest of my life. Each mile stretched endlessly as I gripped the steering wheel, trying to focus on the road through my tears. The twins' faces kept flashing in my mind. Their joy at seeing me, their confusion when told they couldn't sit with me. How could Michael and Vanessa not see what they were doing to those innocent children? By the time I pulled into my driveway, my sadness had crystallized into something harder, more resolute. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Emma and Lily, too. Inside, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, doing what I always did when faced with a problem. I made a plan. My first call was to my old college roommate, Patricia, who had become a family law attorney. "It's not good news, Eleanor," she said after I explained the situation. "Grandparents' rights are limited in our state. Without evidence of abuse or neglect, the courts generally defer to parents' wishes regarding who has access to their children." "So I have no legal recourse?" I asked, heart sinking. "I didn't say that," Patricia replied carefully. "There are options, but pursuing them would likely destroy any chance of reconciliation with Michael. Is that a bridge you're willing to burn?" I considered her question seriously. Was I prepared to take legal action against my own son? The thought made me physically ill. "No," I finally answered. "I won't do that to him, or to the girls. There has to be another way." "Good." Patricia sounded relieved. Honestly, these situations usually resolve naturally over time. Either the controlling party eases up, or the other parent eventually recognizes the manipulation and stands up to it. But what do I do in the meantime? Just accept being cut out of my granddaughters' lives? "Not necessarily," she said thoughtfully. "Have you considered reaching out to Vanessa directly? Sometimes removing the triangulation helps." I sighed. "I've thought about it, but she's made it clear she doesn't want a relationship with me. Maybe it's worth one more try, but on different terms. Not as Michael's mother trying to maintain access to the girls, but as one woman to another, trying to understand her perspective." The suggestion made me uncomfortable. My every interaction with Vanessa had felt like navigating a minefield, never knowing what innocent remark might be twisted into an offense. But Patricia was right. Continuing as we were wasn't an option. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I sent Vanessa a text message asking if she would meet me for coffee, just the two of us. I half expected her to ignore me or refuse outright. To my surprise, she agreed, suggesting a cafe near her workplace the following afternoon. I spent the next 24 hours rehearsing what I would say, reminding myself to remain calm no matter what accusations she might level at me. This wasn't about winning an argument. It was about finding a path forward for all our sakes. When I arrived at the cafe, Vanessa was already seated at a corner table, her expression guarded. She was dressed in her work clothes, a sleek pantsuit that emphasized her tall, slim figure. At 32, she was strikingly beautiful, with dark hair cut in a precise bob and the kind of poise that came from a privileged upbringing. "Thank you for meeting me," I said as I sat down across from her. She nodded stiffly. "Michael doesn't know I'm here." "I understand. I appreciate you coming anyway." I took a deep breath. "Vanessa, I want to start by saying I'm sorry." Her eyes widened slightly. "For what, exactly?" "For whatever I've done to make you feel threatened by my relationship with Michael and the girls. That was never my intention." I held her gaze steadily. "I'd like to understand your perspective better." She seemed taken aback by my approach, having clearly expected defensiveness or accusations. She stirred her coffee slowly, considering her words. "You've always been perfect," she finally said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "The perfect mother, the perfect grandmother. Michael talks about you like you're some kind of saint. Do you know how hard it is to compete with that?" "I've never seen this as a competition," I replied gently. "That's easy to say when you're winning." She looked up at me, her expression suddenly vulnerable. "When we first had the twins, I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrified. And there you were, stepping in, making everything look effortless. Michael would constantly say, 'Mom did this,' or 'Mom says that.' Do you know how that made me feel? Like I was failing my own children." Her candor caught me off guard. "I never meant to make you feel inadequate, Vanessa. I was just trying to help." "I know," she admitted, surprising me further. "Logically, I know that. But emotionally—" She trailed off, then continued more quietly. "I've always felt like I'm living in your shadow in Michael's life. Like no matter what I do, I'll never measure up to you. For the first time, I saw Vanessa not as the woman who was keeping me from my son and granddaughters, but as a young mother struggling with her own insecurities. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped me understand it. "I'm sorry you felt that way," I said sincerely. "But cutting me out of their lives isn't the answer. It's hurting the girls, it's hurting Michael, whether he admits it or not. And yes, it's hurting me deeply." "I know the girls miss you," she acknowledged, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "They ask about you almost every day." Hope stirred in my chest. "Then why continue this separation? Surely we can find a middle ground. Some boundaries that make you comfortable without completely severing our relationship." Vanessa hesitated. "I don't know if that's possible. Whenever you're around, Michael reverts to being your son first and my husband second. I need him to be my partner, to stand with me, not constantly defer to you." "Have I ever undermined your parenting decisions?" I asked. "Honestly?" She thought about this. "Not deliberately, no. But there's always this subtext. Like you know better because you raised Michael alone." "I'm sorry if I've given that impression," I said. "I think you're a wonderful mother, Vanessa. Different from me in some ways, but no less loving or committed to the girls." She looked genuinely surprised by the compliment. "Really?" "Really," I confirmed. "And I'm willing to work on how I interact with your family. But please, don't keep me away from the girls completely. They need their grandmother in their lives, and I need them." Vanessa was silent for a long moment, turning her coffee cup between her hands. "I'll think about it," she finally said. "That's all I can promise right now." It wasn't the resolution I'd hoped for, but it was a start. The first real conversation we'd had in years without Michael as a buffer between us. As we parted outside the cafe, I took a risk and gave her a quick hug. She stiffened momentarily, then relaxed, patting my back awkwardly before pulling away. "I'll talk to Michael," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "But I'm not making any promises." "Thank you," I said simply. "That's all I ask." I walked to my car feeling cautiously optimistic. For the first time since this ordeal began, I'd glimpsed the possibility of reconciliation. Not an immediate restoration of what was lost, but perhaps a new beginning on different terms. Over the next few days, I threw myself into my consulting work and preparations for my upcoming trip to visit Julia in Oregon. I decided to go ahead with the visit, regardless of how things evolved with Michael and Vanessa. It was time I honored other relationships in my life, ones I'd neglected while pouring all my energy into being the perfect mother and grandmother. 5 days after my meeting with Vanessa, Michael called. My heart raced as I answered, trying to temper my expectations. "Mom," he said, his voice cautious. "Vanessa told me about your coffee meeting." "Yes," I confirmed, not offering more. He cleared his throat. She said it was helpful, that you really listened to her concerns." "I tried to," I said. "I want to understand her perspective, Michael. I want us to find a way forward that works for everyone." There was a pause then. "Would you like to come for dinner on Sunday?" "Nothing formal, just, it's been a while and the girls keep asking." I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. "I'd love that, thank you." "Around 5? And Mom?" He hesitated. "Maybe we could try a weekly dinner? See how it goes?" It wasn't everything, not the multiple weekly visits I'd had before, but it was a start, a foundation we could build on. "That sounds perfect," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Sunday couldn't come quickly enough. I spent hours deciding what to bring, finally settling on the girls' favorite chocolate cake and a new children's book for each of them. Nothing extravagant. I was conscious of not appearing to buy their affection, just small tokens to show I'd been thinking of them. When I arrived at their house, Emma and Lily burst through the door before I'd even reached the porch, wrapping themselves around my legs in a tangle of small arms and excited chatter. "We missed you so much, Grandma," Emma exclaimed. "Mommy said you were on a special adventure," Lily added, her eyes wide. "Did you find treasure?" I laughed, kneeling down to their level. "The only treasure I need is right here." I said, hugging them both close. Michael appeared in the doorway, watching our reunion with a mixture of guilt and relief. "Come on in, Mom. Dinner's almost ready." The house looked different somehow, slightly messier, more lived in than when I had been helping regularly. Not in a neglected way, but in the natural way of a family home without an extra pair of hands to tidy up. It made me both sad and oddly satisfied to see that my absence had been felt. Vanessa was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. She greeted me with a cautious smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello, Eleanor. I hope you like chicken piccata. It's one of the few things I can cook without disaster." "It smells wonderful," I assured her, placing the cake on the counter. "I brought dessert. The girls' favorite." "You didn't have to do that," she said, but her tone was more appreciative than accusatory. "I wanted to," I replied simply. Dinner was initially awkward, with conversations stilted and careful, but the twins, bless their innocent hearts, bridged the gap with their endless stories and questions, pulling all of us into their orbit of simple joy. As we ate dessert, Lily suddenly asked, "Grandma, are you going to leave again?" The table fell silent. All eyes turned to me, then to Vanessa, who surprised me by answering. "Grandma's going to come visit more often now," she said, looking directly at me. "We've missed having her around." Michael reached over and squeezed his wife's hand, a gesture of gratitude that spoke volumes. Whatever conversations they'd had following our coffee meeting, it seemed Vanessa had chosen to take a step toward reconciliation. "That's right," I confirmed, smiling at the girls. "I'll be here every Sunday for dinner, and maybe sometimes we can do special outings too, with Mommy and Daddy's permission, of course." Emma clapped her hands excitedly. "Can we go to the zoo again? Remember when we saw the baby elephant and Lily was so scared?" "I wasn't scared," Lily protested. "I was being cautious. Daddy says caution is a virtue." We all laughed, the tension in the room dissipating like morning fog under sunshine. Later, as I was preparing to leave, Michael walked me to my car. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for talking to Vanessa, for not giving up on us." "I could never give up on you," I told him honestly. "You're my son, Michael. That doesn't change, no matter what." He looked down, shame evident in his posture. "I handled this all wrong. I should have stood up for you more, found a compromise earlier. And I should have been more aware of how my involvement might have been affecting Vanessa," I admitted. "We all made mistakes. But only one of us was cruel," he said, meeting my eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything I said, for keeping the girls from you. I was trying to be loyal to Vanessa, but I ended up betraying everything you taught me about fairness and compassion." "You were in an impossible position," I said gently. "Caught between your wife and your mother. I understand that, Michael. I don't hold it against you." He shook his head. "You should. I deserve it." "Perhaps," I agreed. "But holding on to resentment only hurts me in the long run. I'd rather focus on rebuilding our relationship, on making things better moving forward." He pulled me into a tight hug then, and for a moment, I felt like I was holding my little boy again, the one who'd come to me with skinned knees and broken toys, trusting me to fix whatever was wrong. "I love you, Mom," he whispered against my hair. "I love you too, always," I replied. As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months, not because everything was perfect. Far from it. There was still work to do, trust to rebuild, boundaries to establish, but we had taken the first steps toward healing, and that was enough for now. The following week, I kept my promise to Julia and flew to Oregon for a 10-day visit. It was the longest I'd been away from home in years, and I was surprised by how liberating it felt. Julia's life in Portland was so different from mine. She was divorced with no children, worked as a landscape architect, and had an active social circle of artistic, independent people. "You know, Ellie, you've always been the responsible one," she told me one evening as we sat on her deck, watching the sunset over the mountains with glasses of local wine in hand. "Taking care of everyone. Making sure everyone else's needs were met. Maybe this whole situation with Michael was the universe's way of forcing you to finally take care of yourself." I considered her words. Maybe you're right. I never regretted putting Michael first. He was my child after all. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of my own identity outside of being his mother. "And now?" she prompted. "Now?" I'm finding there's still quite a lot of Eleanor left to discover. I smiled, thinking of my new job, my writing workshop, the friends I'd reconnected with. It's scary sometimes, but exciting too. That's the spirit. Julia clinked her glass against mine. It's never too late for a new chapter. When I returned home, I found a handmade card from the twins in my mailbox, decorated with glitter and wobbly handwriting. "We miss you, Grandma! Come back soon!" Inside was a note from Vanessa. The girls made this all on their own. They've been counting the days until Sunday. Safe travels. V. It wasn't a declaration of friendship, but it was an olive branch, one I gratefully accepted. True to our agreement, I joined them for dinner each Sunday. Gradually, our interactions became less strained, more natural. Vanessa began to relax around me, especially when she saw that I was careful to defer to her parenting decisions, even when I might have done things differently. One Sunday, about 2 months into our new arrangement, she surprised me with an unexpected offer. "Eleanor, Michael and I have been talking," she said as we cleared the dinner dishes together. "We have an important client dinner this Friday, and our regular sitter just canceled. Would you be willing to watch the girls?" The request, so normal, so ordinary, nearly brought tears to my eyes. It was more than just childcare. It was trust. "I'd be delighted," I told her. "They can be a handful these days," she warned, but there was a hint of a genuine smile playing at her lips. "Nothing I can't handle," I assured her. That Friday evening with the twins was precious beyond measure. We baked cookies, built a pillow fort in the living room, and read stories until they fell asleep, one tucked under each of my arms. As I sat there, listening to their soft breathing, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not just for having them back in my life, but for the journey that had brought me here, a journey that had forced me to rediscover myself, even as I fought to maintain my place in their lives. When Michael and Vanessa returned, they found all three of us asleep in the fort, a children's book open across my lap. "Mom," Michael whispered, gently shaking my shoulder. "We're home." I blinked awake, carefully disentangling myself from the sleeping girls. "Sorry," I whispered back. "They wore me out." "Join the club," Vanessa said with a quiet laugh, the most genuine sound I'd heard from her in years. As I gathered my things to leave, Vanessa walked me to the door while Michael carried the girls to their beds. "Thank you for tonight," she said, and I could tell she meant more than just the babysitting. "Thank you for letting me back into their lives," I replied. "It means everything to me." She nodded, looking thoughtful. "I've been seeing a therapist," she confessed suddenly, "working through some of my issues with female authority figures. Turns out my relationship with my own mother was more complicated than I realized." This candid admission caught me by surprise. "That's very brave of you," I said sincerely. "It's necessary," she corrected. "For me, for the girls, for all of us." She hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry for how I handled things, Eleanor. I was wrong to try to cut you out completely." "We're finding our way now," I assured her. "That's what matters." Walking to my car that night, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments when I remembered Michael's harsh words, still times when I felt Vanessa's walls go up. But healing had begun. For all of us. More importantly, I had changed. The woman who had sat devastated in her darkened living room, feeling worthless without her role as mother and grandmother, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, more complete, a woman who valued her family deeply but no longer defined herself solely through them. The following Sunday, I brought a proposal to dinner. "I'd like to take the girls to the Children's Museum next Saturday," I said. "If that works for your schedule." Michael looked to Vanessa, who surprised us both by saying, "Actually, why don't we all go? Make it a family outing." Family. The word hung in the air, significant and healing. "I'd like that very much," I said, smiling at my son, my daughter-in-law, my precious granddaughters, my family. Not perfect, not without its scars and growing pains, but whole again in all the ways that truly mattered. That night, as I updated my list, Eleanor's next chapter, I added one more item. Remember that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let go, so that everyone has room to find their way back to each other. The family outing to the Children's Museum marked a turning point in our relationship. Watching Vanessa laugh as the twins dragged her from exhibit to exhibit, seeing Michael's arm casually draped around my shoulders as we observed them from a bench, these moments felt like miracles after the months of separation and pain. "They're growing so fast," I remarked, watching Emma confidently explain a science demonstration to her sister. "Too fast," Michael agreed. He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry they missed those months with you, Mom. I shouldn't have let that happen." I squeezed his hand. "We can't change the past, but we're here now. That's what matters." Later that afternoon, as we shared ice cream in the museum cafe, Vanessa surprised me by asking about my writing workshop. "Michael mentioned you've been working on some children's stories," she said. "The girls would love to hear them sometime." The invitation warmed my heart. "I'd be happy to share them," I replied, "though they're still very rough drafts." "Actually," Michael interjected, "Mom's being modest. Her writing group selected one of her stories for their anthology." "Tell them about it, Mom." I felt a flush of pride as I explained the project, a collection of modern fairy tales with contemporary messages about resilience and self-acceptance. "That's amazing, Eleanor," Vanessa said, and the genuine admiration in her voice was another small miracle. "You never mentioned you were a writer." "I didn't know I was," I admitted with a laugh. "It's something I discovered these past few months." A thoughtful expression crossed her face. "It's funny how sometimes the hardest challenges lead us to discover new parts of ourselves." Our eyes met in a moment of unexpected understanding. We had both been changed by the conflict between us, perhaps, in some ways, for the better. As summer approached, my consulting work at the publishing house led to an unexpected opportunity. Margaret called me into her office one afternoon, her expression unreadably professional. "Eleanor, we've been impressed with your contributions since your return," she began. "Particularly your insights on our children's literature acquisitions." "Thank you," I replied, wondering where this was heading. "We'd like to offer you a more permanent position," she continued. "Senior Acquisitions Editor for Children's Literature. It would be part-time, 25 hours a week, with the flexibility to work remotely when needed." The offer took my breath away. It was a prestigious role, one I would have jumped at in my earlier career. But now, with my relationship with Michael's family finally healing, I hesitated. "I'm honored, Margaret, truly, but I need to consider how it might impact my family commitments." She nodded understandingly. "Of course. Take some time to think it over. The position would start in September, giving you the summer to arrange your schedule." That evening, I called Karen to discuss the offer. "It sounds perfect for you," she enthused. "But I hear the hesitation in your voice. What's holding you back?" "Things are just getting better with Michael and Vanessa," I explained. "I don't want to risk becoming too busy for the twins." "Eleanor," Karen's voice took on that no-nonsense tone she reserved for when she thought I was being particularly dense. "You're not choosing between your career and your grandchildren. You're creating a life that includes both. 25 hours a week with flexible scheduling. You could still do Sunday dinners, still have special outings with the girls. The difference is that you'd have something that's just for you too." Her words resonated with the lessons I'd learned during my forced separation from Michael's family. "You're right," I acknowledged. "I'm falling back into old patterns, thinking I have to choose." "Exactly," Karen said triumphantly. Quote, "Besides, what better role model could those girls have than a grandmother who publishes children's books? Think of how proud they'll be." I decided to discuss it with Michael before making my decision. Our Sunday dinner the following weekend provided the perfect opportunity. "That's incredible, Mom!" Michael exclaimed when I told him about the offer. "Of course you should take it. You don't think it would interfere with our time together?" I asked, still concerned. "Why would it?" He seemed genuinely confused. "It's part-time, and you said the hours are flexible." Vanessa, who had been listening quietly, added, "Eleanor, after everything that happened, I hope you know we want you to have a full life, not just as the girls' grandmother." but as yourself." Her words, so different from the jealousy and resentment that had characterized our earlier relationship, brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I said softly. "That means a great deal to me." "Besides," she added with a slight smile, "I might need advice on children's books someday. I've been thinking about trying to write one myself." This revelation surprised me. "You have?" She nodded, suddenly looking a bit shy. "I've been keeping a journal of the twins, funny sayings and adventures. I thought they might make cute stories someday." "They absolutely would," I encouraged. "If you'd like, we could talk about it sometime. I'd be happy to share what I'm learning about the industry." "I'd like that," she said, and it felt like yet another bridge being built between us. With my family's blessing, I accepted the position. The summer passed in a happy blur of Sunday dinners, occasional outings with the twins, and preparations for my new role. I even joined Julia for another short visit to Oregon, this time feeling none of the guilt or sadness that had accompanied my first trip. As September approached, bringing with it the start of my new job and the twins' first day of kindergarten, Vanessa called me with an unexpected request. "Eleanor, I know this is last minute, but would you be available to come to the girls' classroom on Thursday? It's Grandparents' Day, and they're desperate for you to be there. Michael's parents are visiting his sister in Florida, so you'd be their only grandparent present." I was touched by the invitation. "Of course I'll be there. Thank you for including me." "Don't thank me," she said, her voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. "The girls would never forgive us if we didn't ask you." Grandparents' Day at Lakeside Elementary was a cheerful chaos of elderly visitors being led proudly around classrooms by excited 5-year-olds. Emma and Lily took turns showing me their cubbies, their artwork, their new friends. "And this is my grandma," Lily announced to her teacher, gripping my hand tightly. "She makes the best chocolate cake, and she writes books for children." "Really?" The young teacher looked at me with interest. "Would you be willing to talk to the class about writing sometime? We do an author's unit later this year." Before I could answer, Vanessa stepped forward from where she'd been observing. "She'd be perfect for that," she said, smiling at me. "Eleanor is actually starting as a senior acquisitions editor at Riverside Publishing this month." The pride in her voice as she introduced me caught me off guard. This was so far from the woman who had once seen me as a threat that it nearly moved me to tears. "I'd be delighted to talk to the class," I told the teacher. "Just let me know when." After the classroom activities, there was a small reception for grandparents in the school cafeteria. As I stood chatting with another grandmother, I noticed Vanessa watching me from across the room, a thoughtful expression on her face. When we had a moment alone as the event wound down, she said, "I keep thinking about how close I came to depriving the girls of this, of having you in their school, being part of these milestones. But you didn't," I reminded her gently. "You found the courage to change course." She shook her head. "Only after hurting you deeply. Only after my own mother called me out and the girls cried for you night after night. I was so convinced I was right." "We all make mistakes, Vanessa," I said. "What matters is that you were willing to reconsider, to work toward reconciliation. That takes more courage than being right from the start." She looked at me with new eyes. "You know, when I first met you, I thought your kindness was an act, some perfect mother-in-law performance. I couldn't believe anyone could be so genuinely supportive without an agenda." "I'm far from perfect," I laughed. "Ask Michael about the time I grounded him for a month for a misunderstanding, or how I completely forgot his 16th birthday because I was overwhelmed with work." "He never tells stories like that," she said, surprised. "It's always, 'Mom taught me this,' or 'Mom always said that.' Children, even adult children, idealize their parents sometimes," I explained. "It doesn't mean we deserve it. I made plenty of mistakes raising Michael. I was just lucky enough that the love outweighed the missteps." This conversation marked another shift in our relationship. Over the next few months, as I settled into my new role at the publishing house, Vanessa began to reach out to me more frequently, not just about the girls, but for advice about her own writing aspirations, or sometimes just to chat. One afternoon in late October, she called me at work. "Eleanor, I know this is your busy day, but I was wondering if you'd have time for coffee tomorrow." There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Curious, I agreed to meet her at our now regular cafe. When I arrived the following day, she was already there, a thick folder on the table beside her coffee cup. "Thank you for coming," she said, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. "I wanted to show you something before I shared it with anyone else." She slid the folder toward me. Inside was a manuscript, neatly printed and bound with a simple title page, The Adventures of Lily and Emma, by Vanessa Carter. "You finished your book," I said, delighted. "It's just a first draft," she cautioned. "But yes, I've been working on it at night after the girls are in bed. I'd really value your professional opinion." The trust implicit in this request, not just in my editorial skills but in my fairness and honesty, was profound. This was the same woman who had once been so threatened by my relationship with her daughters that she'd tried to remove me from their lives entirely. "I'd be honored to read it," I told her sincerely. She nodded, looking both relieved and still anxious. "There's something else," she said, taking a deep breath. "I've been seeing my therapist regularly, and we've been talking a lot about my issues with female authority figures, especially mothers." I waited, giving her space to continue. "I lost my father when I was 9, she said, looking down at her coffee. "After that, my mother became very controlling, very critical. Nothing I did was ever good enough. When I met you, and you were so different, so supportive and loving with Michael, I think it triggered all my unresolved feelings about my own mother." "Oh, Vanessa," I said softly, reaching across to touch her hand. "I had no idea." "How could you?" she shrugged. "I never talked about it. Even Michael doesn't know the full extent of it. But I'm telling you now because I want you to understand why I behaved the way I did. It doesn't excuse it, but it helps explain it." I finished for her. "Thank you for trusting me with this." She looked up, her eyes damp. "I also want to tell you that I admire you, Eleanor. The way you've rebuilt your life. After what we put you through. The way you've forgiven us. The grace you've shown. I hope I can be half the woman, half the mother you are someday." I was deeply moved by her vulnerability, her courage in acknowledging her past behavior. "You already are an extraordinary mother, Vanessa. Lily and Emma are lucky to have you. And so is Michael." She smiled through her tears. "And they're lucky to have you too. We all are." As I drove home that afternoon, Vanessa's manuscript on the passenger seat beside me, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From the pain of that initial conversation with Michael, through the desolation of separation, to the slow, careful rebuilding of trust and, now, the blossoming of something I'd never expected, a genuine friendship with my once-estranged daughter-in-law. That evening, I settled in to read Vanessa's stories. They were charming, funny, and surprisingly well-crafted for a first attempt. Vignettes about the twins, adventures, their perspectives on the world, their questions and discoveries. But what touched me most was how I appeared in them, not as a perfect, saintly grandma character, but as a real person, with a distinct voice and role in the girls' lives. In one story, Grandma's Magic Pen, the character based on me helped the twins create their own stories when a rainy day threatened to ruin their plans. In another, 3 Generations of Cookies, we all baked together, making a magnificent mess but creating a memory more precious than perfect cookies. I called Vanessa the next morning. "I love the manuscript," I told her truthfully. "It has real potential." Quote, "Really?" The hope in her voice was palpable. "You're not just saying that because you're family?" I chuckled. "Vanessa, in my new role, I have to reject manuscripts from people I like all the time. Believe me, if I didn't think your stories had merit, I'd find a kind way to tell you so." "Thank you," she said, sounding genuinely relieved. "Do you have any suggestions for improvement before I think about submitting it anywhere?" "A few," I admitted. "Why don't we set up a time to go through them together? I could help you prepare a submission package when you're ready." "I'd appreciate that more than you know," she said warmly. Our new collaboration brought an unexpected dimension to our relationship. Twice a month, we met at my house to work on her manuscript, discussing character development, plot, the nuances of writing for children. Michael seemed bemused, but delighted by our newfound connection. If someone had told me a year ago that you two would be writing partners, I'd have thought they were crazy, he commented one evening after picking Vanessa up from one of our sessions. "Life is full of surprises," I replied, kissing his cheek. "Some of them actually turn out to be blessings in disguise." As the holidays approached, bringing with them the one-year anniversary of my forced separation from the family, Vanessa and Michael invited me to dinner on a Wednesday, breaking our usual Sunday routine. "We have something to discuss with you," Michael explained when I asked about the change. I arrived to find the dining table set beautifully, with candles and the good china they usually reserve for special occasions. The twins greeted me with mysterious smiles, clearly in on whatever was happening. Once we were seated and the food served, Michael cleared his throat. "Mom, this time last year we made one of the worst mistakes of our lives by asking you to step back from our family." I started to protest that we'd moved past that, but he held up a hand. "Please let me finish. That experience taught us all some valuable lessons about respect, about the importance of extended family, about not taking the people we love for granted." He looked at Vanessa, who nodded encouragingly. "We've been talking," she continued, "and we want to propose a new arrangement. The house next door to us is going up for sale. The Andersons are moving to Arizona to be near their son." My heart began to race as I realized what they might be suggesting. "We'd like you to consider buying it," Michael said, watching my expression carefully. "If you want to, of course. It would mean you could be closer to us, to the girls, while still maintaining your independence. You'd have your own space," Vanessa added quickly. "Your own life. But you could see the girls more easily. Maybe have them over after school sometimes when we're both working late." I was overwhelmed by the offer, by how far we'd come from those dark days a year ago. "Are you sure?" I asked, looking from one to the other. Living that close, it would be a big change for all of us. "We're sure," Vanessa said firmly. "More than sure. We want you in our daily lives, Eleanor. The girls do too." "Say yes, Grandma," Emma pleaded. "Please, please, please," Lily added, bouncing in her seat. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at these four beloved faces, my family, offering me not just reconciliation but true integration into their lives. "I would love that," I said finally. "Thank you." Later that night, alone in my house, I pulled out the leather-bound journal I'd started keeping during my separation from Michael's family. On its pages, I'd chronicled my journey from devastation to rediscovery, from isolation to reconnection. I'd recorded my pain, my anger, my moments of despair, but also my small triumphs, my new friendships, my growing independence. On a fresh page, I wrote, "Today, my son and his wife invited me back into the heart of their lives. Not as the woman I was a year ago, dependent on my role as mother and grandmother for my sense of self, but as the woman I've become, stronger, more complete, with a life that complements but does not depend on theirs." I closed the journal, feeling a deep sense of peace. The path that had led me here had been painful beyond measure, but I wouldn't change it now. Through that pain, I had found not only myself, but a richer, more honest connection with my family than I'd ever thought possible. When my son's wife made him choose between her and me, and he chose her, I thought my world had ended. Instead, it had cracked open, revealing possibilities I'd never imagined, for independence, for creativity, for a new kind of relationship based on mutual respect rather than dependency. Sometimes, being forced to let go is the beginning of receiving something even more precious in return. Not what we thought we wanted, but what we truly needed all along. Moving into the house next to Michael and Vanessa marked the beginning of a new chapter in all our lives. The process was both exciting and bittersweet, leaving my home of 30 years, with all its memories of raising Michael, for a fresh start that symbolized our healed relationship. But as I packed each box, I felt a growing sense of rightness about the decision. "You're taking that hideous lamp?" Karen asked one afternoon as she helped me sort through belongings. She pointed to the misshapen ceramic monstrosity that had graced my bedside table for decades. "Michael made it in 7th grade art class," I explained, wrapping it carefully in newspaper. "It's coming with me." "At least put it in a closet," she suggested, making a face. "Your new place is so beautiful. Don't ruin it with sentimental ugliness." I laughed but tucked the lamp securely in the definite box. Some things were non-negotiable, regardless of aesthetic appeal. The moving day arrived in early February, with unseasonably warm sunshine that seemed to bless the transition. Michael and a group of his friends handled the heavy furniture, while Vanessa organized the kitchen essentials with surprising attention to how I preferred things arranged. The twins fluttered between the houses, ostensibly helping, but mostly exploring their new extended territory with uncontained excitement. "Grandma, you can see our swing set from your kitchen window," Emma exclaimed, climbing onto a chair to demonstrate. "And we made a secret path between the backyards," Lily added conspiratorially. "Dad says we have to ask permission before using it, though." By evening, the basic necessities were in place, though boxes still lined most walls. Michael ordered pizza for everyone, and we sat in my new living room, sharing our first meal in my new home. "To new beginnings," Michael toasted, raising his paper cup of soda. "And to family finding its way back together." Later, after everyone had gone home and I was alone in my new space, I stood at the kitchen window. Emma was right. I could see their swing set, now silvered by moonlight. Beyond it, warm light spilled from their kitchen windows, creating a comforting glow in the darkness. Close enough to be present in their daily lives, yet separate enough to maintain my own identity. It felt like the perfect balance. Over the next few months, we settled into a rhythm that honored both connection and independence. The twins often came over after school, letting themselves in with their own key while I finished work in my home office. We established homework and hot chocolate Tuesdays as our special tradition. They would spread their assignments across my dining table while I provided encouragement and assistance. And chocolate, of course. Vanessa and I continued our collaboration on her children's book, which was progressing nicely toward submission-ready status. To my surprise, she also began confiding in me about other aspects of her life, her frustrations with certain school parents, her worries about her mother's declining health, her occasional struggles in her marriage to Michael. "I never had this kind of relationship with my own mother," she admitted one evening as we sat on my patio, watching the sunset with glasses of wine. "The ability to just talk, without judgment." "I'm honored that you trust me that way," I told her sincerely. She twirled her wine glass thoughtfully. "You know, when I was trying to push you away, part of me was terrified that the girls would love you more than they loved me. That seems so ridiculous now." "Not ridiculous," I corrected gently. "Just human. We all have our insecurities, especially when it comes to the people we love most." "How did you get so wise?" she asked, half joking. I laughed. "By making plenty of mistakes and living long enough to learn from them." Spring brought new developments. Vanessa's manuscript was accepted by a small but respected children's publisher. With a modest advance and a publication date set for the following year, Michael received a promotion at work that would require occasional travel, and I found myself unexpectedly drawn to expand my own writing beyond the children's stories I'd been working on. "I think I want to write about last year," I confided to Karen over lunch. "About being cut off from my family, about finding myself again, about reconciliation, not as a memoir, exactly, but as a novel for women in midlife who are facing similar transitions." "That's brilliant, Ellie," Karen encouraged. "There are so many women our age who've centered their identity around their families, only to find themselves adrift when circumstances change." Exactly. I felt a surge of excitement about the project. I want to show that it's never too late for reinvention, that loss can sometimes lead to unexpected gifts. I mentioned the idea to Michael and Vanessa during our next Sunday dinner, somewhat tentatively. To my relief, they were both supportive. "I think it could help a lot of people," Michael said thoughtfully. "Just promise you'll change our names if you include the part where I was a complete jerk." "I was thinking of calling you Ungrateful Son Number 1, I teased. "Seems fair." He laughed. Vanessa was more contemplative. "Would you include my perspective too? I think it would be valuable for readers to understand both sides of the story." Her suggestion touched me deeply. "I'd love that if you're comfortable sharing." And so a new collaborative project was born. As spring turned to summer, Vanessa and I began meeting regularly to work not only on her children's book, but also on what we came to call the Separation Project, my novel based on our family's journey. Our conversations during these sessions often delved into painful territory, requiring honesty and vulnerability from both of us. "I need to understand something," I said during one particularly intense discussion. "When you first suggested keeping me away from the family, what was your true motivation?" Was it really about the girls, or was it something else? Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. It was about fear, she finally admitted. Fear that I wasn't enough. Not a good enough mother, not a good enough wife. When the girls would get excited about seeing you, when Michael would quote your advice, I felt replaceable. And instead of addressing that insecurity, I tried to eliminate the perceived threat. Her candor moved me. Thank you for being honest. That helps me understand. I have a question for you too, she said tentatively. Did you ever, even for a moment, resent the twins because they were part of why Michael chose me over you? The question took me aback. No, I replied after careful consideration. Never. I did resent you for a time, and I was deeply hurt by Michael's choice. But the girls? They were innocent in all this. If anything, missing them was the most painful part of the separation. These honest exchanges found their way into our manuscript, creating a richness and authenticity that might otherwise have been missing. By late summer, I had completed a rough first draft that incorporated both my experience and Vanessa's perspective. This is powerful, Eleanor, Margaret said after reading the draft. We were having lunch in the publishing house cafeteria, where I had brought the manuscript for her personal feedback before deciding whether to submit it professionally. It's raw and honest, but ultimately hopeful. I think it could really resonate with readers. You don't think it's too personal? I worried. She shook her head decisively. The personal is what makes it universal. Everyone has experienced some form of rejection, betrayal, or loss. Not everyone finds their way to forgiveness and rebuilding. Your story offers a roadmap for that journey. With Margaret's encouragement, I decided to submit the manuscript formally through proper channels, not leveraging my position at the publishing house for special treatment. This felt important to me. I wanted the book to succeed or fail on its own merits, not as a favor to a colleague. While the manuscript was being considered, life continued its beautiful, ordinary rhythm. The twins started first grade, proudly walking to school together each morning, occasionally stopping at my house if they were running early so I could send them off with extra hugs. Vanessa's children's book moved into the illustration phase, with delightful watercolor images that captured the girls' personalities perfectly. Michael's new position kept him busy but fulfilled. And I found myself embracing a life I could never have imagined a year and a half earlier. Working in a career I loved, writing creatively, maintaining close friendships, and yes, being a deeply involved grandmother, but on terms that honored everyone's boundaries and needs. One crisp October afternoon, I received the call I'd been both anticipating and dreading. The acquisitions team at Riverside had reached a decision on my manuscript. We'd like to publish The Choice, Margaret informed me, using the working title I'd selected, with some revisions, of course, but the team feels strongly about its potential. Joy and disbelief washed over me. At 63, I was about to become a published author. I called Vanessa first, knowing she would understand the significance of this moment better than anyone else, given her own recent publishing experience. They're going to publish it, I exclaimed when she answered. Her squeal of delight was so youthful and genuine that I laughed out loud. I knew they would. It's brilliant, Eleanor. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have written it without you, I told her sincerely. Your willingness to share your perspective made it whole. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. When I think about how close I came to destroying our relationship forever. And now, here we are, collaborating on a book about that very experience. Life has a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? I reflected. In the best possible way, she agreed. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Revisions on the manuscript, planning for Vanessa's book launch, the twins, increasingly busy school and activity schedules, and preparation for the holidays kept us all happily occupied. On Christmas Eve, Michael and Vanessa hosted the family celebration at their house, with the twins nearly vibrating with excitement as they helped decorate the massive tree in their living room. Grandma, we made you something special, Emma announced as I arrived, laden with gifts. It's a surprise for tomorrow morning, Lily added importantly. You'll have to come over super early. I promise to be here bright and early, I assured them, touched by their enthusiasm. After the girls were finally persuaded to go to bed, the adults gathered in the living room with cups of mulled wine, enjoying the peaceful glow of the Christmas tree lights. I have something for both of you, Michael said, reaching under the tree for two small, identically wrapped packages. I wanted to give these to you tonight, privately. Vanessa and I exchanged curious glances as we accepted the gifts. Inside each box was a beautiful silver charm bracelet, each with 3 charms already attached. "The book represents your writing collaboration," Michael explained as we examined the delicate silver charms. "The house is for our new living arrangement. And the heart, well, that one's obvious." I felt tears well up as I fastened the bracelet around my wrist. "It's beautiful, Michael. Thank you." "There's room to add more charms," he pointed out, "for all the new chapters yet to come." Vanessa leaned over to kiss him, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "It's perfect." As promised, I arrived early on Christmas morning, letting myself in through the back door as instructed. The twins were waiting in their pajamas, practically bouncing with anticipation. Come see," they chanted, pulling me toward the living room. There, beside the Christmas tree, stood an easel covered with a sheet. With theatrical flourish, the girls pulled the sheet away to reveal a large, framed canvas. It was a painting of 3 female figures, clearly representing 3 generations: myself, Vanessa, and the twins. We were depicted sitting together at a table, books and papers spread around us, all leaning in toward each other in conversation and laughter. Above us, written in flowing script, were the words, "3 generations of storytellers." "Mrs. Anderson from art class helped us," Lily explained. "But it was our idea." "Do you like it, Grandma?" Emma asked anxiously. "I love it," I whispered, kneeling to embrace them both. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received." Over their small shoulders, I met Vanessa's gaze. She stood in the doorway, watching us with a smile that contained all the growth and healing of the past 18 months. "Merry Christmas, Eleanor," she said softly. "Merry Christmas," I replied, my heart full to bursting. Later that day, as the house filled with the chaos and joy of Christmas, wrapping paper strewn across the floor, new toys being enthusiastically tested, the scent of roasting turkey filling the air, I found a quiet moment to step outside onto the back porch. The winter air was crisp and clean, the sky a perfect, clear blue. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the heartbreaking conversation in my living room when Michael had chosen his wife over me, the desolate months of separation, the gradual, sometimes painful process of rebuilding not just my relationship with my family but my own identity. And finally, this new life that was richer and more fulfilling than I could have imagined. When Vanessa made Michael choose between us and he chose her, I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning in many ways. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed, talents that had lain dormant for decades, and a capacity for forgiveness that had ultimately led to deeper, more authentic relationships than before. The back door opened and Michael stepped out to join me, draping a warm blanket around my shoulders. "You okay, Mom? You've been out here a while." I smiled up at him, just reflecting on how sometimes what seems like the worst thing that could happen turns out to be a doorway to something beautiful. He nodded, understanding immediately. "I think about that a lot, how close we came to losing each other permanently. How differently things might have turned out if you'd given up on us, or if Vanessa hadn't found the courage to change." "But we didn't lose each other," I reminded him, squeezing his hand. "And sometimes that's the greatest gift of all. The way back to the people we love, even when the path seems impossible to find." The door opened again, and Vanessa appeared with the twins, all bundled up against the cold. "We were wondering where you 2 disappeared to," she said. "The girls want to try out their new sleds on that little hill behind your house, Eleanor. Are you up for it?" "Always," I replied, feeling a surge of joy as Emma slipped her small hand into mine, and Lily latched onto my other side. Together we made our way across the connecting path between our yards. This little family that had nearly broken apart but had instead found its way to something stronger, truer, and more beautiful than before. As we climbed the small hill, the twins running ahead with their colorful new sleds, Vanessa fell into step beside me. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to be afraid that loving you meant the girls would somehow love me less. Now I understand that love doesn't work that way at all." "How does it work?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She smiled, watching as Michael helped position the twins at the top of the hill. "It multiplies. The more love there is, the more it grows. There's always enough to go around." I nodded, my heart full. That's the most important lesson of all, isn't it? It is, she agreed, and I'm so grateful we learned it together. As we reached the top of the hill, the twins, excited voices calling us to watch their first run, I silently thanked the painful journey that had led us here. To this moment, this family, this love that had been tested, broken, and rebuilt stronger than before. Some lessons can only be learned through loss. Some strengths can only be discovered in weakness. And sometimes, the most precious gifts come wrapped in the most painful packages. But if we're brave enough to keep our hearts open, to choose forgiveness over resentment, growth over stagnation, love over fear, we might just find that what seems like an ending is really just the beginning of something far more beautiful than we could have imagined. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.